Nike Mag event. I didn't have an invite. I'm gonna see if I can finesse my way in this place, right? The theater's packed. Security was there. We eventually got kicked out, but we were lucky enough to see Tiffany Beers speak.
Takes me back to my early New York complex days too. Tony, who's behind the scenes of the interview, will be able to remember too. But one of us would get an invite, or somebody would get an invite on their team, and man, we'd stretch that into 5 or 6 admissions. All right, like we would go there, like, oh, we'll see if they're gonna let us in, or
Yeah.
just kind of like go in there confident and see if we can go in there. We were just trying to, like, again, figure out, get some good coverage for our job and really kind of experience that. So I remember that feeling of being hungry and being like, well, we'll see what happens when we get there. But, if
Yeah.
there's an opportunity, we're going to at least try, sometimes successful, sometimes not. So that's really cool, man. And what about product? Again, I don't want to, would be here for hours if you start talking about all
We'd
of
be we'd be here for volumes. I have
yeah,
so many stories.
yeah.
It's crazy.
I want to hear, a couple of cool ones. It doesn't have to be the most hype, but just a couple of shoes or one or two that you got seeded or you got an event that just mean a lot to you, right? With the story behind them or the person that gave them to you.
Like one of my most prized possessions is the Air Jordan 1 Fragment. When I was in high school, I had a music teacher that would play one of Hiroshi's like older albums. And I didn't know about Hiroshi Fujiwara as a streetwear like legend. I knew him as a musician. Like that's like the first knowledge that I've ever had of him was through his music. I was probably like 5 years old when the album actually came out. But this was introduced to me in high school, in like the late early 2010s. I started to do more research on him, and I'm like, man, this guy sounds really fucking cool. So I would try to find as much info as I could. I would go on eBay to find these like magazines, these Japanese streetwear magazines that you can only get like overseas. Obviously, I didn't know any locations that would sell them in Chicago, so I would buy them, and I would have a homie that would translate them for me. He's done collabs with Starbucks, dude. Like he has his own Starbucks coffee mug. He's done collaborations with Fender. Like he has his own amplifier with Fender. Like that's crazy. And you would never imagine like, someone that you knew that does sneakers, right? You just know him as Hiroshi, like the person that owns Fragment that collaborated with Travis Scott on, like on tomorrow or today's Air Jordan 1 release.
Yeah.
But his like catalog goes way beyond that. I mean, this guy's done snowboards. Like this guy's done so many different things. So that what that did was shift my mentality on understanding that our human potential, right, and what we can do doesn't have to be limited to that one thing. Just experimenting with all these different things without fear of failure. And that's why I'm so drawn to the branding and to like the Air Jordan 1 Fragment, because to me that represents one of his many like things that he represents.
Yeah, man, that's actually that's an incredible story, and a lot of that stuff I didn't know either. So thanks for sharing that. And I think I was saving this for later, but I want to say that I feel like now we live in, to that point, we live in like a world and a social media ecosystem where there were no more kind of guardrails. Like everything is evergreen. Like if something's cool, you just post it. Like all the mood board pages, like there's literally no rhyme or reason, and sometimes no caption. It's just like, I found this on the internet. It's cool. Boom. It's like almost like Tumblr again, right? And
Right.
I want to say, like, I'm not here to just big up you and modern notoriety, but I feel like you guys have been doing that for a long time on your page, right? Like now, like,
It's all
again,
over the place.
all of these places overlap, right? Like, so now the
Yeah.
idea of anime and sneakers is not that big of a deal. And of course, I know that there's a storied history there between the two, but like when it comes to people who aren't into anime, like that might be foreign. And I see you have always mixed these different things that now I'm learning you were into, and you're just like, oh shoot, if I'm into it, maybe other people are too. Let's see what happens. And
Yeah.
now when I look at the page, it's almost like the rest of the world kind of caught up to some of the formula that people were doing, where it's just like, if it's cool, I'm posting it. And then if you
Yeah.
like it, you like it. So is that something that you did consciously, or you were just like, again, like throwing stuff
I
and try not to be boxed in, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I just didn't want to do just sneakers. I think that there's a lot of things that like I represent, and there's a lot of things that like I feel like other people that will connect with other people. And I just kind of was like, you know what? Like if people fuck with it, it's a blessing. If they don't, I want to stay true to what it is that like what I wanted to do with modern notoriety, and like I'm just gonna post more things that might um connect with people outside of sneakers. Started posting like Game Boys and like, you know, nostalgic PlayStation stuff. And this was like 2015. Like everyone kind of just stuck with the rules with just posting what, you know, they were meant to post. I kind of was like, you know what? I just want to post all these kinds of different things because I want to have at least, you know, like little fragments, no pun intended, of things that like, you know, represent my personality, but also represent what I want, you know, modern notoriety to be about. You fast forward to 2021 and everything is a mood board now. Like it's so crazy. And I'm happy that I started it when I started because like, you know, shout out to Maya when he was handling the social, you know, at Complex. He helped a lot because I feel like when you're credited on certain things and like, you know, whoever's behind that social that sees the vision and they share the content that they saw on your page and they give you credit for it, even they don't have to, but the fact that he did that, you know, it helped us a lot.
The sneaker blog era, you're talking, we've been talking about this, and it's a common theme, and it may not be an important chapter for everybody because we all have different entry points into sneakers, into the overlapping cultures. But I'm so passionate about that era that I because of my age, I consider it to be maybe around 2007, 2008 to 2000, yeah, a good 10-year run, right? To 2018. And yeah, and then like you mentioned, now everything is like, it's changed and blogs are still there, but now it's like mood boards or YouTube, and there's a lot of it's evolving, which as it should. But that era to me is so important, and I don't think that era gets enough credit for how much. I was expecting that reaction because you and I have talked about this before, but I think people often undermine the idea of sneaker bloggers, and you're just some nerds behind a laptop who talk about shoes all day, and then brands just send you shoes and life is all good. But you know, that was, you know, for a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier, they were doing that for free or on the low. You know, I definitely wasn't living large when I was sneaker blogging, right? So it's like you really have to love that stuff to do it, and have to see the bigger picture and say, hey, I'm going to use this as a stepping stone, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. But so yeah, when I look at like now billion, I don't even know, but like sneaker culture is insane now, right? And it's created them, and I love it. For the record, it's a good thing because it's creating jobs and opportunities for people like us. But I think back about that, and it's like there's no way this happens without that decade long of sneakers in your face every day. Because then, like you mentioned earlier, and then Complex and Main feed starts posting it, and it's all the people who maybe aren't following sneaker blogs, like, oh, I'm gonna go follow Modern Notoriety now, and it starts to really spread. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Because I personally think we don't get to this point in sneakers without the sneaker blog era, and people just kind of skip over it. It's like, oh, Michael Jordan won 6 rings, and then boom, 2021, the AJ1 is the most popular shoe ever. I'm like, whoa, we're skipping over a lot of pretty important milestones or chapters there.
This industry where it's at would have never happened without the sneaker blogs, because a lot of people didn't have relationships with the sneaker boutiques to even find out that kind of information. The sneaker boutiques themselves, or even like the mom and pop shops, they didn't even know the story behind certain colorways. They were just selling the product. Without the sneaker blogs, a lot of things wouldn't have happened, and this industry would have never been booming. You take sneaker blogs out of the equation, people got athletes and celebrities, they got hyped over features. So what happens? All of a sudden, like athletes started posting more sneakers, athletes started posting more fashion pics, celebrities started posting more sneakers because they started to see the reposts and they started to see, but where do you like, and the engagement and the people that were gravitating towards that type of content, where do you think that they were influenced? It was from the news feeds, from seeing the hype like that the blogs were creating through social. I mean, you look at like 10 years ago, I believe it was All-Star 2011 where the whole Galaxy thing went crazy, right? Was that weekend? That right there was when things started to shift, because now campouts reached national news years ahead of when Jeff Staples, you know, pigeon dunk released like in the mid 2000s. So now you're seeing like these videos in Orlando. I think it was in Orlando, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was in Orlando. You start seeing like the videos of the helicopters hovering over people. You start seeing people in malls running. You know what I'm saying? So that's when it started to shift. And then fast forward, you have the Air Jordan 11 release from that December. And that's when I feel like it kind of started to really, you know, shift into this media crazy. It just started to become very, very, very big.
I can only speak to it from my point of view, but 2007, I get to college, and then I go from a small town to this huge university, diverse university, and I'm starting to see all these sneakers that I'd never seen before, right? Because I wasn't on Nike Talk. I was on Nike Talk after 2007 when I got to college, but I wasn't before that. So I was a little bit late to that game. But then the blog era just kind of exploded, and I remember I'd go to my office job on campus and just check all the blogs, Hypebeast, Nice Kicks, Shoe Game, Complex, All Collector, eventually Modern Notoriety, things like that. And that's where I was getting my info. And again, it's the first time ever as somebody who loves shoes, I would be excited just to look at photos of shoes. Like I wasn't even like, I knew I didn't have enough money to buy all these shoes, but just reading them, it's kind of like you were saying earlier when you started working in that store. The OGs was telling you, oh, this, and this, and you're just like a sponge. Like, what? I didn't know that. Everything is so cool. Like, that's why I think right now sneaker community is kind of gatekeepy. But when you think about how fun it was when you first got into it, I'm like, yo, if you're into shoes, let's talk. Because you're about to go on a roller coaster. I'm happy to help you.
Camping. When was the last time you camped out for a pair of shoes?
2009.
Yo, the last time I camped out that I remember that I camped out for a pair of shoes was like in 2014.
Yeah,
that's a long time ago, but that was one of the biggest reasons why. That's how you networked. Camping out was like the sneakerhead way of like networking, and you would meet so many different people, and it would, you guys would talk like from like night till morning till the store opened up. Like those were like the best time. I'm happy I was alive for that time too. Like it was you can't compare those moments to what's happening now because everything is just so digital, and you have like outside forces coming in that aren't even passionate about it just to get a quick buck, and they'll force their way in it just to make money, which kind of makes it unsafe for the authentic individual that wants to get a pair of shoes.
It's funny to see how it's become like a really popular industry to work in. But when we got into it, we just loved shoes, and it kind of just like worked out. But I would have done this for any other thing that I was passionate about, right? We just got lucky. But I do want to switch over to the idea of community. As I mentioned in the intro, SoulSavvy offer a bunch of different tools and resources for our members when it comes to copying shoes and copying them for retail, just offering an alternative to paying crazy prices. But where I think I see the most value for myself and from my friends who are members is the idea of community. Like you just mentioned, talking all night about shoes at a camp out, some of those realities aren't necessarily attainable today, nor should they be, right? There's safer ways to release shoes, but there's still that need for a community to talk about shoes and to interact with people. And again, that's why I think that our members love SoulSavvy. But for you, you've been doing the same thing with Modern Notoriety, specifically like on a local level in Chicago when it comes to the photo walks. So what is your take on how you build a community from a passion and an internet thing to kind of real life, and then also on the internet? But what has that been like? That journey been like for you to actually see these people say, "Hey, we're here because of Notoriety." Oh, you follow them, or you go on their photo walks. We're like, let's meet, let's network.
It all starts with authenticity, man. I think if you really love what you do, you can include other people. And I wanted to build Modern Notoriety to a point where I could do those things with brands. I spent like 10 years building it. I spent a lot of time and energy building it, trying to keep it to, a consistent level. Then I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, how can I make this more fun, but more like inclusive with creatives and people that want to be a part of something? So a quick story. The reason why I wanted to include people in what I'm doing and just have them feel like they're a part of something was because of like my experiences working at a sneaker boutique, and like me not getting invited to certain Nike events in Chicago. I'm over here like feeling salty in the stock room, like, damn, what? Y'all got invited to this, So I'm over here geeking out over like the possibilities of like, being invited to an event or doing things with a brand. Fast forward like almost like 12 years later, or 10 years later, like I said, you know what? I want to build this thing to where I can like hit up Puma and I can say, hey, look, we want to bring more energy to this product, but we don't want to really do an activation. We want to do like a photo walk around it. And when you see people like, come in with their cameras, or we give them disposables, it just has like such an authentic community feel where it feels like we're just like hanging out, and just creating and just like making the best out of the moment. And we're doing it with the brand.
I love shoes for a lot of reasons, right? The stories behind them, my favorite players, the colorways, flat out just trying to be fresh. But like none of this stuff to me is as cool as it is today or as big as it is today without like the people like that you can share it with. And like I know that sounds like a little cheesy because we're talking about
Oh,
shoes here,
it's just what
but
it
it's
is.
that's what makes it fun. The people
Gosh,
you meet geeking out, how'd you get those? Or and you know that's been at the core of sneaker culture since its inception. But I feel
yeah.
like sometimes we lose that when we start thinking about prices and hype and this and that. And it's just like, yeah, if you take a step back, like the most fun you're gonna have is gonna be the interactions and the people you meet.
You can win a pair of sneakers, right? On sneakers. I'd rather grab my pair of shoes having camped out with a bunch of cool ass people than just staring at my phone.
For sure, I couldn't sit by myself. That was an unintentional ad for Soul Savvy because again, that's what I think it is. It's like the camp out experience, especially during the pandemic, like the physical experience of being able to go somewhere and talk kicks with people has been eliminated. So it's again, it's companies like ours and like yours that are really trying to restore that or breathe new life into that, whether it's the photo walk, whether it's just a random thread on Soul Savvy about a discussion of a shoe, like that stuff again is like we can't lose sight of that because it becomes way less cool without that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I do want to talk about something you and I speak about privately a lot is kind of like the mindset of the modern day aspiring sneaker industry professional, right? I feel like when we were coming up, like we mentioned earlier, you were down to work for free. And there was kind of a sense of pride of hey, I work in this industry. I'm going to do my best and try to work my way up. And now because of social media clout, because of how big the influencer space has gotten, which again, that's zero hate from my side. I think there are a lot of dope influencers doing cool stuff. But again, I think like who've worked really hard to get there, mind you. But I think that because people coming into this space see that and they see, oh, wow, this is how you get seated. This is how you do that. This is like you, people want to skip that step of like learning the game, understanding the culture, understanding the history, why certain things matter. It's not that everybody needs to be a nerd, sneaker writer, historian, but again, that's part of the fun of it. And that makes it all kind of worth it when you work really hard to get a shoe. So are you getting that same sense from people now where it's kind of like there's a cheat code to try to make it in this industry and like all of the stuff that was so beneficial to people like you and me coming up is like no longer needed in the eyes of some people?
I'll see people from brands not really see anyone from blogs. The people that are constantly putting out this news and like keeping like the information out there. We live in an era where most people that get seated don't really care that they got seated. They just either they got used to being seated. That one post is a drop in the ocean compared to all the articles that you can find in that one brand and on Google. You can't Google an Instagram post.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, I see it from both sides for sure. Having the opportunity to be on both sides of that, but I do think that's a great call to action for I wouldn't even say the next generation because your age doesn't necessarily matter. If you want to be in the industry, know that there are more opportunities than just designing and being in front of a camera. Because I think as the culture grows, the brands are being forced to adapt at a pace that these big brands don't really move that quickly when it comes to evolving. So I think that's why there's a huge gap for people who are like, hey, I love sneakers, I'm passionate about them, I know all this, but also I'm a marketer, I'm an email person, I'm a writer, I'm a PR guy, right? There's all these other roles that we don't really talk about. So I think what you just said is a perfect call to action of that. It's really not going to fix itself until the people who are really passionate about it start applying those passions and saying, all right, well, you got to be good at more than one thing to be successful in any industry these days, right? You can't just be have one single lane. So if you already have all of that passion down and all of that knowledge, now just go see if you can, how fast you can learn a different skill and break into that. Because again, it's not going to fix itself, and these brands adapt really slowly. So I think for anyone listening, that's a really good call to action to say, hey, it's time for me to help fix this. Because it's going to take a lot of us to do that. Before we jump out of here, man, I don't want to take too much of your time. I would love to do this again, though, because I feel like we're just scratching the surface of some of the conversations you and I can get into.
I haven't even talked about how I was notorious for sample leaks and why I was part of the reason why they stopped allowing people to take their phones into like the seasonal, like the product viewing. Like we haven't even gotten to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that shifted too. I feel like after, like, when I was at the Bryn, it was the opposite. We got to the point where, like, you bring your phones, bring your camera crew. That way you can create content, and we would just add some embargoes. But yeah, I would love to get into like kind of like the different eras of how sneaker media has evolved. In a lot of ways, it's still the same, but there's been a lot of changes. So that's probably a combo for another combo for a different episode. But I would love to talk about that because there's so many freaking parts in that 10-year chapter that are impacting exactly how we see and experience sneaker culture today. But to cap things off and to super timely on today, what are some things that you're feeling tonight, like feeling today as far as product goes, as far as brand goes? I know you have some sneakers behind you. What's on your feet these days, and are there any new things that caught your eye lately?
The Fragment Travis Scott ones, man.
Did you get them yet?
Only because of Fragment. If there was just a regular Travis Scott, I won't even trip. But only because of Fragment.
Did you get them yet?
No.
I know that today was the big day. Man, somebody get this guy a pair. Did you hear that story? Come on.
My love for that brand is it's again, it started with his music. It didn't even start with streetwear or sneakers. It started with his music. I think Adidas basketball is really killing me. I think with the new silhouette, Donovan Mitchell, that brand, that new one is to me is aesthetically pleasing. Anta, I've always been a fan of Anta. Like, if you really look at how sharp their footwear looks visually, to me, it's like pleasing. What I'm wearing nowadays, I'm still wearing my Jordan, my Band ones from 2011. They're so beat. Van Skate Highs, my Iron Maiden Van Skate Highs, I'm still wearing. Still love wearing Ultra Boosts. I beat a lot of my shoes up, man. Like, I just wear.
I respect that, man. I wish I could do that. I used to do that, but now it's like I don't leave my house very often, and I just have so many cool stuff that I want to wear. I still have a few pairs that I'm like, oh, I didn't realize those have heel drag. Like, I didn't realize I was wearing those a lot. But
what's funny is that now the thing is beating your sneakers up. Like, that's the cool thing to do. Like making them 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even, like, that nobody would have ever thought that would be popping.
That's funny, man. I'm glad that all these years later, we were friends now and we can still connect over sneakers and have a good time. So I appreciate you joining us, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, man.
All right. Signing off from the Soul Savvy podcast. My name is Marco Henry Negrete. Thank you to Oscar Castillo from Modern Notoriety for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.